Okay.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sporting Max. So today we're joined by South East Melbourne Phoenix assistant coach, New Zealand men's national team assistant coach, and former Tall Black himself, Judd Flavell. Welcome to the podcast, Judd. It's amazing to have you on. How are you going at the moment?
Yeah, good, Max. It's a hell of an intro. I kind of forget that I used to be a player. We've been coaching too long now. So, no, I've been going great, mate.
That's good. Now, what was growing up as a kid in New Zealand like for you?
Yeah, New Zealand. I mean, a great place to live. I mean, obviously, smaller city. I grew up in a town or a city called Whangarei, which is 2 hours north of Auckland. Basically, Auckland's our big city and everything else is fairly small, community-minded. And, you know, where we lived, there wasn't too much basketball, but there were some basketball families that I guess were held a lot of the basketball community together. My family being one of them. My dad was a coach, and he coached me all through my age groups, and he coached the men's team that we had there too. Good friend of mine and cousin, Piero Cameron, also grew up. Yeah. We grew up together, same age and rivals, until he grew to being, you know, the man mountain that he is at the moment. But yeah, I mean, it was a great place to grow up, able to play all the sports under the sun. And then that was really the start of the basketball for me. And then, yeah, just, you know, as you do, you move along as you leave home. And I was fortunate enough to play in the New Zealand NBL and played for a few teams and got to see, or got to play with a lot of good players. And that was the good foundation. And yeah, it was kind of the same with a lot of New Zealand basketball players. You know, they didn't necessarily come from Auckland. Everybody came from small towns.
Yeah. Now, sort of, you mentioned your playing career there. Now, I think you played with the Tall Blacks. Can you expand on how that opportunity came about?
Yep. So I think it was left home, went down and moved down to Waikato, which is an hour and a half drive from south of Auckland. So actually, Piero and myself, we went down here. Went down to Polytech, which is, you know, kind of, I guess, the tertiary education. Basically, we just spent a lot of time playing basketball and very little time studying. But it gave us the great opportunity to play in the first division in the NBL. And from there, I guess, you know, Piero went straight into Tall Black trialist and went straight into it. And for myself, it took me a few years to sort of, you know, get my foot in the door there. But I think it was just in the New Zealand NBL and being able to get that first opportunity to play. I think, you know, and that's what I encourage any youngster coming through, as long as you're getting the opportunity to get to play, because that really worked for me. And then from there, I was able to go and move to another team that was a sort of a top 4 team. I got to start and play a lot of minutes for them. And I'd seen a lot of my peers, my own same age group players that were just sitting on the bench. And I think that just gave me a little bit of a boost. And then, yeah, age 22, 23, had been knocking on the door for a while. And, you know, finally made that transition into the national team then. And you know, I think, you know, we enjoyed some years of success there and during that period, and it was a good time for New Zealand basketball.
In 2002, you competed in the World Basketball Championships. Now, you guys finished 4th as a team. How did you feel after that bronze medal playoff game? And can you take me through that tournament?
Yeah, so it all started, as you'd know probably, Max, that to qualify for the World Champs, we had to knock off Australia, which had never been done before. I think the Tall Blacks had only ever beaten Australia once, which was back in, I think it was like 1979. And that was on a tip-in buzzer beater. So, you know, we had to, I guess, get over that big hurdle. And, you know, we did in 2001. It was a 2-1 series victory. And our expectations at that time probably was, you know, we're going to the 2002 World Cup in Indianapolis. we have no expectations of ourselves, basically.
Yeah.
We haven't played a lot of these teams before. It was all first time for all of us too. So we had no idea what we're getting ourselves into. And then we kind of, we turned up to the tournament. From then until the tournament, I guess our coach, Tab Baldwin, and the assistant coach, Nenad Vucinic, they'd done a great job in just installing some real genuine belief in us and what we could do. And we still had to go out on the floor and prove it. Probably some big moments for us was like in our pre-tournament, our pre-tour. We were over in Europe and playing and getting as much experience as we could get on the international stage, because none of us had this international experience. Like, it was new for New Zealand. So the opportunity to go and play against France and at the time Yugoslavia, or Serbia and Montenegro, they were called then. And teams like that, it was just powerhouse teams. This was our first time, so it was great. We got to a tournament. I think we're in Germany at the time, playing in this tournament, 4-team tournament. Us, Germany, Lithuania, and Serbia and Montenegro. And Serbia and Montenegro were the current, maybe the world champs, defending world champs. And we beat them in this game. It was a great game. Sean Marks had, I think, 27 points. He was the best player on the floor, and amongst a lot of NBA players that Serbia had. And I think from that game, sitting in the locker room after that game, we all sat there talking about what we had done. And it was a little pat on the back, but it was like a real reality check in terms of, hey, we can do this. We can go to this tournament, and we can, if we execute the game plan, and if we play the way that we know we can play, why not? Why can't we go ahead and do something special? And from that moment, I feel like we all grew in confidence. Gelled together, yep. And our very first game was against Russia. And we'd been talking about Russia for like 3 months. We already knew the draw, and our minds were totally on Russia the whole time. We were looking at them as early as like a month into it, just seeing recruiting, and the coaches did a great job of just building this game plan. And we turned up, we had a dream start. We knocked over Russia, which at the time were a powerhouse team. A very young Andrei Kirilenko was in their team. And for us, that was the start. And we played with confidence. I think we knocked over China as well, Venezuela. And then the teams that we actually lost to were the teams that ended up ahead of us in the tournament. So we lost to Serbia, we lost to Germany, we lost to Argentina. Yeah. Actually, we did lose to the US as well. I mean, they gave us a good little spanking, but I mean, the great thing about international basketball is that every team has their own unique signature. They all have their own different styles, and it's really like when you get those styles together, sometimes your style is just something new. And I felt like we had a unique style. Piero Cameron was huge. We'd play off Piero, and everybody just knew where to get to the right spots, and then putting that all together, on the night, and we were able to do something special.
You mentioned Piero Cameron before. Playing with guys like him, Paul Hanare and Phil Jones, what was it like to grow with these guys and develop and experience different cultures and sort of go to that championship with them and really bond and gel together?
Yeah, the good thing about New Zealand basketball is that the talent, is different now, but back then probably the depth of talent wasn't, it's not as deep as what it is here in Australia, of course. So the upside to that is a lot of us got to play together in junior teams before we actually got to play with each other in the senior national team. So you had a bond already. And getting to learn to play with each other. Well, we had already done that. So that by the time we got to senior level, there was a chemistry there that I think that was probably our greatest weapon. And when you talk about those guys, like we had all played with each other in the New Zealand NBL. And that's the beauty of being like just such a small country. Yeah, and is that you're able to, it was just a look of the eye for Piero, and everybody knew which way he was going and which way we needed to go. And those are little things I think even in today, you try to build your team to have that amount of chemistry, and that takes years to do that. The successful teams, I think, even in the NBL, are the teams that have kept their core together for numerous years. So we already had that deeper level of understanding. There's something always special about representing your country and being a New Zealander. I think we're always kind of that little brother, especially to Australia. So anytime it comes up to playing international basketball, there's just no questions asked about what you're going to do for your teammate and what you're going to do for your country. And we had to play that way, Max. Like otherwise, we could not go out on the floor and just expect our skill to take over. We had to make sure that everything was on point and that we were either out executing teams, or if we couldn't do that, let's turn this game a little bit ugly and get a little bit niggly and try to take the skill element out of it. So, and everybody was on board, no questions asked. And that's the beauty about playing for your country.
You also mentioned before that spanking you got handed to by the US in that World Championships. Now, it's a childhood dream of anyone's to be able to meet these NBA superstars, but then to spend a game playing against these guys from the US at those World Basketball Championships in 2002. Can you extend on that experience of being out on court for a full game with guys like Reggie Miller and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty special. I think, it all started when, so, before we play, right, we step on the court and we line up and before the national anthems, we do the haka.
Yeah.
So this was the thing about the 2002 World Cup. Like this is the first.
What did they look at you when you guys are doing the haka? What are their like facial expressions?
I tell you what, we had anything from sort of laughing to the Venezuelan team thought that we were actually cussing them out, so they were cussing us out. The Americans actually got out their cameras and started taking photos. We had the Russian team that kind of just walked straight past us as we were halfway through it. And it was a really funny moment because we all kind of lined up and there's a few in the front. Yeah. And everybody, as the Russian team walked past us to their bench, everybody kind of did a 90-degree turn to follow them. And except for, I think it was Dylan Boucher who was at the front. And because he didn't see what was going on behind him, he was still facing the other way on his own, which was just one of those little funny moments. But every team had their own different response, and it was just they hadn't seen it before. Australia have seen the haka before because of our rugby, our two countries, smashing each other in the game of rugby and rugby league. But for a lot of these guys, this was new. So that's where I was starting with the US team. It was like the very first start when they saw us, they were kind of like, thought that we were performing for them, and then we get to play on court. And I believe at halftime, I think we're only down by maybe 10 points or so. It was a really close, like we had a great start. We made our shots. Yours truly was able, I made a couple of, I think I made a three and a couple of jumpers. And, it was one of those moments where I think they were coming down the court and I was marking Michael Finlay one time. I might have had, was it Andre Miller coming down at me one time. I think I had a 2-on-1, which was like Andre Miller on one side, throwing a lob to the Matrix, Sean Marion. And I've done the, like, where's that going? And before I knew it, Sean Marion's up on the rim. So it was just, it was special. It was a chance to play against, these guys that you'd only seen on TV. And for a little old New Zealand, players that barely got out of their own country, this was one of those games where you were soaking it up and you were living your dream and you were trying to compete all at the same time, which was surreal.
But also have fun.
But yeah, absolutely.
Now, what did you take out of your playing career that you could then translate into your coaching career?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I was talking about, like how we had to approach the game when we're the underdog, being tiny old New Zealand, and the way that we approached it was we had to be, maybe we couldn't out jump our opposition or outrun them, or even the skill set. And we didn't even have the experience on a lot of these teams. But we knew that if we had a game plan that everybody was bought into and everybody knew exactly what their role was, then there's no reason why you can't succeed. And that's what I've taken with me into my coaching philosophies, I guess, is that, you can always get more out of yourself if you got the whole team willing to move in the right direction. So we were able to prove that on the international stage. And it's something that I think in the professional sport, I think every coach is probably trying to do that. But after sort of living it and breathing it and seeing how successful it was, I mean, that's one of the main drivers that I try to install into the teams that I have, that I've coached.
In 2006, you joined the New Zealand Breakers as an assistant coach and also as the academy head coach. What did your roles consist of in your first sort of early years at the Breakers?
Yeah, so moved out of plane, and then I put my name forward for the Breakers assistant coaching job. And it was I was kind of at a crossroads, which many players are when they get to the end of their career. And I was like, right, let's see how this goes, and put my name forward, and had a discussion with Andre Lemanis, and I ended up getting the job, which I didn't know Andre at the time. And so, yeah, but what an opportunity that I was given. And being an assistant coach at that time, for me, there was an element of it where I thought, man, I just had the best seat in the house, because I was watching some great basketball, sitting on this, sitting courtside, watching this great level of basketball. The very first game was my very first game in the NBL was Joe Ingles' debut game. And I'd heard a lot about him, and just that was his rookie game, first game. And I think, what did he have? 28, 29 points on us. And you knew, wow, this guy's special. And you look at his career now. So, but yeah, the academy was something that Andre, when I day one, it was actually funny. Day one, and Andre said to me, okay, you've got this academy. We want this academy to be up and running, but it's your baby. I've got a roster I've got to put together. I think at the time we had an import that had just been picked up by the San Antonio Spurs, Rich Mauser. I believe he was contracted for the Breakers, but then got picked up in the NBA. So he, all of a sudden, his immediate focus was on trying to get a player to round out the roster. So he kind of just said, Judd, go and do it, and take it on. And from that moment, my vision was always what I'd seen was across in Australia, in Canberra, the AIS. I'd been lucky enough to go and visit there and play against the AIS when I was playing for the New Zealand, one of the development teams. And I'd seen the setup, and I'd seen, obviously, it was, a completely different level than what we could ever do. But that was my vision in terms of, okay, get the best athletes, get them training together. Let's see what resources we can use, capitalize on from the Breakers, physios, our trainers, utilizing the gym, and just start building relationships with these kids. And, that's probably one of the, it's probably understated, but it's one of something that I'm probably most proud of, is because you start to look at the careers that we were able to open the door up for. A lot of guys that are currently playing right now. Rob Lowe, who came when he started, was 14 years old. Ruben Tarangi, who was 13 years old. Shea Illy, the Webster brothers. The Isaac Fortu, who's overseas. But some really good players there, and really seeing them come walking in the door as a teenager, and then seeing them leave with going on to college or going on to the professional teams was something special. So, I think the Breakers, the club, and in particular the academy too, has played a big role in New Zealand basketball.
So what's it like when you sit back and you go, and you've seen the careers of guys like Shea Illy and Corey and Ty Webster, and they've just become elite players in the NBL now?
The very first thing it taught me was not to put ceilings on these athletes when they were young. one of the things I think as a coach, sometimes we look at players and we assess them, and then we think we're quite quickly to judge them and say, yeah, he's never gonna make it for this reason or for that reason. And I've completely changed my mindset on that. Whereas I think, well, if you can just, zero in maybe on one or two of these weaknesses that they can improve, but really look to expand what they're really good at and master some skills, then there's no reason why they can't go. Like Shaylee didn't have a jump shot. He was still learning his craft and just what the game, understanding the game. Great, phenomenal athlete, but just had a lot to learn. And, to see him in a short amount of time to get to, just where he got to, or where he is at right now, and a solid player in this league, has been a starter, and probably arguably one of the best defenders, if not the best, or defender in the competition. So, he's just a good example of, and he was at a crossroads. He was like, he really loved rugby. His first love was rugby. And so we had to keep drawing him in. No, like, you're good enough to be a basketballer here. And so seeing those guys and doing what they're doing now is something special. And even though I get to coach against them now, I still got my hat on from, when I was their coach and seeing their development. And it's pretty special. And that's something that I think that you can never take away from them. And and I would encourage all coaches to do the same, because it's just a world of potential there for anybody.
In 2010 to 2011, you were the Harbour Heat head coach in the NZNBL. How was that experience for you of being a head coach?
That was, so up until that point, I think I had 5 years of being an assistant coach with Andre and Dean Vickerman as well. And I think in that 1 year of head coaching, I probably learned more than what I did in the 5 years of being an assistant. And that's not to say I wasn't learning anything. It was just, there was so much to take in as a first-time head coach. And I probably learned more about myself as a coach, in terms of, now I'm the one that has to deal with everything. I can't just, whereas when you're an assistant coach, I got my little box that I've got to do, and I've got to make sure I do A, B, C as best I can. At the end of the day, the rest will fall onto other people's shoulders. But when you're the head coach, it all falls on your shoulders. And that year we had a great team. We recruited a very good team. We got to the playoffs. I think it was a quarterfinal. I think we were fourth, playing against fifth. We end up losing that game. As you'd expect, everybody was gutted. But for me personally, I'd learnt so much from there and grown so much from that moment.
Throughout 2012 until 2015, I believe you were the New Zealand men's under-19s head coach. How did that role come about?
I think it's just a matter of putting your name in, and I think I had been around a lot of those junior players before, because with the Breakers Academy, so I had good experience in terms of relationships with a lot of these players. The good thing about the Breakers Academy is that we were drawing upon the Auckland area, which had a lot of basketball talent, but we also opened up the doors to kids from the South Island or around the country, Wellington, all over. And we were bringing them up for camps during the summer and allowing them to be a part of the Breakers environment and club. And so we reached out as far as we could. And it really gave me a great opportunity to talk to coaches around the country, access to work with some of the best players that we had. And I think that was probably a good, contributing factor, so to speak, for me to pick up that New Zealand junior head coaching job. And plus having, I think, the thing about New Zealand basketball, and it's such a small community, is that a lot of things are volunteer based. There's not a lot of full-time coaches there. And so I was in the fortunate position that I was getting this coaching every single day, every year, and really felt like my coaching experience was, obviously taking on a lot, but really learning and growing every year. So yeah, that's where it started. And once we got into the national teams and we started touring Australia for state championships and things like that, those were all great experiences as well.
What's it like to watch young basketballers develop and progress in that under-19 side?
Yeah, one of those players that we had was Isaiah Liafa, Mariohoho Liafa.
Yeah.
And that to me was something. He's from Wellington. So I didn't get to work with him on a weekly basis, but I got to work with him for a couple of years just with the national team. Obviously great talent. And it was you could see that he had the goods to go on.
Yeah.
And I guess, like I said with the other guys, just a chance to be able to see them early in their careers when they're just so influential, right? They're at that age where they're impressionable and just soaking everything up. And you just knew at that time that he had some gifts, but he was just taking on. He was very coachable, and to see us now full circle, just tag up again, has been great. Jani Witsel was another one that he was in our Breakers Academy, late bloomer, late starter. Didn't start playing basketball seriously until he was 17 years old. So we had 1 year with him in the academy. I threw him into the junior Tall Blacks trials. Unfortunately, he missed out. He was just so raw, but you could just see that after.
And now you watch him now, and he's like,
like everything that he does now, he had the potential in him. He had great footwork, could run all day, and just so eager to learn and grow. And then, he's another great example of one that sort of had a late start, but was just totally committed to what he was wanting to do. And then you look at him now and those things, and obviously the Phoenix, and seeing Ruben Tarangi as well. As a coach, it's great to see them at the start of their career.
Yep.
And you watch them progress, but it's special to be able to walk in the stadium with these guys at the moment. And here we are, we're going to battle again together, so all these years later.
So you were at the Breakers for those 4 championships. What championship do you think was the best experience for yourself, or I guess sort of that toughest route to the championship?
Yeah, it's definitely the first one, Max. We had, I think at the time, it was one of those in New Zealand sport that we had like a lot of competitions that where New Zealand teams are competing in the Australian league, like football or soccer. You've got the A-League, you've got the Wellington Phoenix that are competing. You've got the New Zealand Warriors that are competing in the NRL. You've got a few of the netball teams that are competing in the Australian competition, or used to. And no one, I believe, had won that. No New Zealand team had won it. Wow. And I think at the time, it was no one would have expected the basketball team to be able to do it. I think in our early years of Breakers, like we were wooden spooners. We were so far off the pace that probably, if you had to guess that one team was going to do it, the New Zealand Warriors were probably the best chance. I think they came second. They lost the final in 2002. And they always had so much promise. But yet, here we were building towards something special. And in 2010, when we did win it, I felt like we won it not just for the Breakers, but we won it for New Zealand, and we won it for all those teams that were competing in the Australian competition. And we got plenty of support from them. New Zealand, although being small, but the beauty is everybody jumps on board, doesn't matter what sport it is, and especially when you're playing against Australia. And there was nothing better for us to go ahead and winning that competition. And I think it went to show that any one of us can do it. The fact that we went on and did it, 3 times in a row, I mean, that was truly special. But I think that first one for sure, just to get the monkey off the back and prove that, it is something that everybody can aspire to and achieve.
Now that 2015 championship team, you had Dean Vickerman, head coach, and I think you just had Reece Carter in that side too.
Yep.
We've had both of them on the podcast, by the way. What was it like to work with a great sort of coach like Dean, who knows his players and who can make sure that all these guys are gelling well together and they can run the floor?
Yeah, Dino, we had a long time together. So I think probably had 6 years together as co-assistants, so we shared an office. So I think during that time it was so good for me. I got to learn so much under working with Dean, and although Andre was there, when Dean took over, it was once again I was learning through Dino, watching him make the steps from being an assistant coach to a head coach. So I got a lot from my coaching knowledge and experience is because of Dean. And you're right, he does have a real ability to empower his players, connect with his players, and his passion rubs off onto his players as well. Yeah. And that's something that I've taken away from Dino with his coaching. And to see him in all his teams, they compete so hard and they play tough on the defensive end. That's all a reflection of Dino, of who he is. And he did some great things for the Breakers, and he's gone on to continue to do some great things. And it's always great to get one over him, because that you have to earn it. Your team has to earn it to beat his team. So, but look, I learned a lot of good things, and seeing somebody like Reece Carter come through, who started off as a player and made that transition. And it's just great to see these guys continue to contribute in a coaching fashion.
Mm-hmm. Now in 2016, you returned to the NZNBL as the head coach of the Southland Sharks. Now I think they were coming off a championship winning season. So how did you find coming into that team in a sort of championship winning mentality environment?
Yeah, that's a good one. So the very first, I guess, job was try to recruit the team back, right? And the whole team pretty much went and moved to Wellington. So Kevin Braswell, who was a player for the Sharks at the time, the import, he got the coaching job with the Breakers. And, the two biggest pieces was Ty Wesley and Shea Illy. And they went with him. Before I sort of we were in a position to kind of grab these guys or do that, they had already sort of made their choice to go to Wellington. And so it became, I guess over the years, Wellington and Southland, it became a healthy rivalry. I think that we brought the best out of each other. But putting that 2016 team together after the championship, we had to start new. We had to start all over again. And that for me was exciting. It meant that what I was starting with was a blank canvas. Yes, they had won it the year before, but this team hadn't won it. So we had to, whatever we had to do, we needed to earn our stripes, so to speak. And, we recruited, I had my two imports were Jordan Jet and Nick Kay, a very young Nick Kay that had come straight out of playing from Townsville Crocs. And, we had a good base of New Zealand talent too, with Alex Pledger and Everard Bartlett, Dwayne Bailey. So we were competitive, but it took us a while to really find our groove, because we just, we weren't, we were learning about each other. We had new players, we had a new group, you had a new coach. So we ended up playing Wellington in the semi-finals. I think we lost by 3 or 4.
Too bad.
It was down in Southland, so it was a ripper of a game. But we came out on the other side, and Wellington won it that year. But during those years with the New Zealand NBL and the Sharks program, this was the first time that it gave me a program to run. More than just coaching on the floor, managing your staff, building your staff off the floor, and being able to manage that. And I've been fortunate enough to coach some very good players that's come out of that Southland Sharks program. And we had Mitch McCarron my last year there for a handful of games before he had to go back because he was carrying a knee injury. But Todd Blanchfield, Mitch Norton, it's mentioned Nick Kay, but just the opportunity to be able to work with these guys was really special, and we were able to do some good things as well.
It's a bit of a trend there, don't you reckon? 3 of those 4 guys, Nick Kay, Todd Blanchfield, and who was the other one?
Mitch Norton.
They've all gone to play at the Wildcats.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like
It's like playing together.
I think, at the time, Nick Kay and Mitch Norton had moved from Townsville to Illawarra together. And during that time, they'd moved from Illawarra to Southland, Sharks, and then to Illawarra. And then from Illawarra, they came back and did another year with us in Southland. And then they went from there, they went to Perth. So they were joined at the hip. That was a happy married couple, those two. But no, great people. And I think when you see them, those people that end up at the Wildcats, and we all know about the Wildcats culture and the quality of people that they have there, it's no wonder that those people are in hot demand, especially from those teams that have a really proud culture.
Now yourself and the Sharks won the 2018 New Zealand Basketball League Championship. What was that championship series like for you?
Yeah, you know what? We have a Final Four, much like the sort of the college style, where it's just a straight out knockout semi-final. We turned up. So that year we had a very good team. Jared Weeks was probably our leader. He was pretty dynamic in that league. Our offense centered a lot around what Jared was doing, and we had some great other pieces on the floor, like I was talking about, Alex Pledger, our imports, who are both playing over in Europe right now. One of them's in the ACB, Connor Morgan, the Canadian, and Ruben Tarangi, of course, who had been with us for 3 years. So it was just like getting to those semi-finals where you work so hard throughout the season, and now this is just a one-off game. It's kind of nerve-wracking because all that good work, it puts you in a position to get to the semi-final, but everything you've done before in the past doesn't mean anything now. It's just a one-off game. You have no home court advantage. They put it into at that year we played in Wellington, the Final Four, and probably the biggest thing that we had during the week was Jared Weeks had pulled up lame with a hamstring or some type of strain, just out of nowhere. Just sort of started off in practice at the start of the week, and I remember the physio saying, "Oh, it will be just a couple of days, and he'll be good to go. He'll be good to go for the semi-final." And we're playing against the Nelson Giants, who had a very stacked team, very good team, very well coached, and got to a couple of days away from the game. I'm going, he's going to be okay, isn't he? Like Jared Weeks, he's going to be good to go, right? And he's like, yeah, let's give him another day. And it just kept on going. And then we got to a day before the game, and it was clear that it was going to be a game time decision. Mm-hmm. And we all crossed our fingers and toes and everything else. And we got to the tip off or before the game, and it was a no, he can't go. So that was probably like one of those little things where, as a coach, you're prepped all you can, and then all of a sudden, this happens and it's taken it away from you. You kind of feel at the time, you're like, man, this is gutting for us. But you kind of don't have the time to really have to think about that. You just got to move on with what you got. And, we played against a Nelson Giants team who had the starting lineup was Kyle Adnam, Damon Hire, Jerry Evans, Finn Delaney, and I think Tohi Milner-Smith.
Yep.
Mika Fakona was coming off the bench for them, and they have some other local players that are very, very handy. And it was a close game, great game, like back and forth. They had an opportunity to last possession to win it, and it was unfortunately for us, they didn't get it, and we ended up winning that game. And that was a big one, for a massive one. So massive because it also gave Weeksy a chance, another 24 hours to prep, to see if we can get him up to speed for the final. And we went into the final, and Weeksy, unfortunately, he said, right, he's going to give it a go.
Yep.
Doesn't think he'll be able to go, but we just said, look, let's just start the game, run up and down a few possessions, and to see see if the adrenaline kicks in, and see if it just takes over. And he ran up a few times. I think he scored maybe 4 or 5 points. I think he got to score a 3, maybe an and 1, so maybe 6 points. Got us off to a ripper of a start, and but about 3 or 4 minutes into it, we had to sub him out. He was done. It was just, leg was no good. So, we ended up beating Wellington Saints in the final, and it was a great feeling of, I guess, a little bit of redemption from the previous 2 years. We'd lost to the Saints in the semi-final and the final, so we knew we were close. We were building something, and this one here, where we knocked them over was a good feeling, and nothing better probably on the Wellington home floor as well. But I mean, it was just it was one of those moments where I was just happy for the whole team, and just goes to show that you just got to move on with the pieces you've got. And losing Weeksy was a huge piece for us, but to our credit and to the boys' credit, some of them played out of their skin. Ruben Tarangi had a final that he will remember for a very long time. Like, it was great to see and be a part of.
Can you expand on what your time at the New Zealand Breakers was like up until 2020? I think it was.
Yeah, man. I'd been there for 13 years. 13 years, and from day one when I worked with Andre, and just sitting on the courtside seats and thinking, man, I got the best seat in the house here. To spending 13 seasons, there's a lot of good people there that built great relationships with during that time. I think anytime you've been somewhere for 13 seasons, you kind of feel like you're part of the furniture, I guess. And obviously we had a lot of success in seeing them, the Breakers turn around from being probably, wooden spooners to winning all those championships, and seeing the growth of these youngsters coming through and what they were doing. They're just so, there's so much to be proud of, and seeing the Breakers during that time just be almost, I guess, we knew that as soon as other people started talking about maybe that, hey, this club's pretty special, that was almost like a validation for us that, well, even these teams from across the ditch now are starting to, and we had players wanting to come here and play, and whereas in those early years we had to try to convince those players to come over. So that was just a great journey. And in that time, obviously, I got the opportunity to work with some great people, and seeing a lot of my, I guess, the coaches continue to grow, and that they're still coaching it right now. I almost felt like, because I was part of that, that's helped me open up some doors for me, and landing myself over here in Australia as well. So I got a lot to be thankful for. The owners at the time, Paul and Liz Blackwell, were amazing. And I thought that was normal. I kind of thought, that's what owners do. But you kind of realize later on, you're like, no, that's not normal. They were just so special. And so it's a real forever hold a dear place in my heart, because of the people that we've had a lot to do with during that time.
Joining the new South East Melbourne Phoenix, their inaugural NBL season in NBL 20. How did you get that position?
I believe it was a conversation. So Simon Mitchell had been successful in being named the head coach, and I think the story kind of goes that maybe he was having dinner with Dean Vickerman one night. and maybe was looking for assistant coaches. And I think my name must have got thrown into that mix. I'm not sure if this is official or not, but, and then, that led to a phone conversation. And a phone conversation led to just meeting up with each other. I didn't know Simon. I knew Simon from when you walk past each other and you shake each other's hands and you did the small talk thing. But that was it. So, and from there, I think obviously what I had going for me was the fact that I'd been part of the Breakers' success and the culture that comes with it. Not just the on-court success, obviously, that everybody sees that, but it's probably more about the culture. And when the Phoenix, my first discussions with Simon and Tommy Greer, they were all about the culture. And that really was exciting to hear. I think it's to me, I think there are some clubs that probably talk about culture, but it's probably just words than anything else. And then there are clubs that really live and breathe it. And I got the feeling from Simon and Tommy that they were pretty passionate about this culture and what they were trying to do. And there were a lot of parallels. They were a Melbourne team, but competing against the heavyweights of Melbourne United. And to me, that was a little bit like New Zealand Breakers trying to prove themselves that they were worthy and that they belonged. And I was all in. That was exciting. And so that was a big move, because I'd been with the Breakers for 13 years. But maybe this was like one of those opportunities that wouldn't come around too many times. And so my wife and I and the family, we decided to do it and go for it. And Melbourne's a great city, and we haven't looked back.
Now I think in that first game of the season for the Phoenix, I think they might have beat Melbourne United by 3. Mm-hmm. How did that feel for you guys to go, we've won our first ever game playing in the NBL. We've won it and we've beat Melbourne United, who were sort of all hyped up by everyone. Got your Melo Trimble and your Sean Long coming in.
Look, I think I was so happy for Simon and for Tommy. Obviously, everybody was happy. We just beat Melbourne United. I could only imagine what those guys must have felt like when they'd sat together and only had a piece of paper to work from, and to see in a few months' time that, leading up to the very first game, I can't imagine how nervous and just the amount of anxiety that must have been going on. For me, it was just another game. But for these guys that, this was something they've been eyeing up for, probably just a little over a year maybe. This was a special moment. And so when I saw Tommy and I saw the fist pumps that he had straight after the game and he was in the crowd, to me, that was probably the one of those moments that I was so proud of, and I really felt like that was for those guys. It was great. Sure, it was great to get the win over Melbourne, but it was just a moment that we belonged and that the Phoenix had arrived on the scene, and we had some big expectations of ourselves, and obviously we didn't deliver what we wanted and finish where we wanted to finish, but I felt like we had laid down a good foundation in that first year.
Now, NBL 21, the teams had a lot of firepower coming in. Brian Brokoff, Mitch Creek, Ruben Tarangi, you've mentioned before, but gotten unlucky with a couple of injuries with guys like Brokoff out for a while there, a bit of an eye injury, I think there was. How do you reflect on this season so far?
This season has been... So this has been my 15th season, and no other season has ever, I guess, come close to what we've experienced this season, right? So it started off with the whole COVID thing, where last season it had sort of disrupted the final series. And I guess we started training pre-season back in April. still thinking that a season was going to start in October, that everything would settle down until then. And then that quickly changed. And okay, maybe it's going to be moved back to November or December. And then it got to January. And then a 4-month preseason became 8 months. So, and everybody just eager to go. And a little bit of anxiety about, is this season going to actually happen? But eventually it did. And like we've managed to, we got 36 games in this season, which is unbelievable to think about, really. So that's been different. We've had schedule changes, left, right, and center. And I think what it's highlighted is that although these circumstances are changing and you got to be able to deal with it, like it's one of those things that you preach it all the time about, okay, just control the controllables. And these little, bumps in the road are going to happen, and you just got to be able to just keep your focus forward and just keep driving through it. So I think we've done a great job with that this year, and I think every team in the same boat. Think about the Breakers and what they've had to do and what they've had to overcome, and talking to some of their players, like their mindset is very focused on just what's the next game. And it's been a tough season for a lot of people in that regards, but the fact that we're here and we're getting close to the end of the season, like, hats off to a lot of people for that, because it has been a unique one.
In January 2020, you got the call up as an assistant coach for the New Zealand men's national team alongside head coach Pero Cameron. How did you feel when you got that call up?
Yeah, it's special. Like I talked about, representing your country as a player, you have the exact same feeling when you do it, even in a coaching role. You just got a different role, right? Like you just can't get out there on the floor and run around. So, but it is so special. To me, the Tall Blacks culture and the feel is something unique. Like I don't even think I could explain it to do it. If I tried to, I wouldn't be doing it any justice. Like it is so special that I think like no one gets paid for it. I mean, there is some payment, but it's we do it not because of that. We do it because we want to be part of it, and it's just it's almost like going to battle. It's like going to war. Like it just you have to do. You got a job to do, and everybody comes together and puts everything aside, put the ego aside, and here we go. And our challenge was to beat Australia, right? In that one, and so. That's always an easy one for us to get up for it, just as well, I'm sure, for Australians, making sure that you don't lose to this New Zealand team. So to be able to do that and join my old friend and Pero Cameron and tag up with him again was great. And, and hopefully there's many more of these opportunities coming forward.
So Tokyo 2021 Olympics, how are you guys shaping up heading into this event?
Yeah, well, we've got a schedule that's in front of us. It's still trying. The very first thing is just trying to. We're just trying to, I guess, track down players that are available with this unique season that we've had. A lot of players, I guess, are probably going to be looking for a little bit of rest. I think a lot of the Breakers players that have been away from home have probably seen this time that, they probably want to be around home and around their wives and family too. They've been away for a very long time. So the first step in that mission is just to make sure that we've got, enough players, or that we've got a team that we can put together. So we're doing that at the moment. And the schedule will be, as I believe, or nothing's been confirmed as yet, but we will probably more or less have a camp, maybe in Australia, and then fly out to Indonesia and for the Asia Cup, which is 2.5 weeks. And then, that's all we have up until this point. And it's something that New Zealand basketball, and it's, it's unfortunate, but we just don't have the amount of resources and finances that we can just fly around the world. And this is probably the wrong time to be doing that anyway, but this is going to be one of those times where it's going to be fairly short and maybe just the Asia Cup for now until we get into the next window of the FIBA windows.
Who would you describe as the best player you've worked with or coached throughout your career?
Best player. There's a few. I've been lucky enough to work with some great ones. I think I'll name a few just because I think there's some for different reasons. Tony Ronaldson was a player that I think in 2007 that the Breakers had recruited, and we'd brought him in to change the culture, just to be a part of the new direction that we wanted to go through. And he was a vet, still very good player at the time, but not in his prime. And the best thing that we could have done was recruit Tony Ronaldson, because he really helped establish just the toughness that we needed, the professionalism that we needed. And, he was a huge part of that, influencing the club and moving in the right direction. Moving along to, Kirk Penny, who I played with when he was a teenager. I played with the national team, and now this was an opportunity to see him come back and play for the Breakers. And to see him do so well in this league, I think in that first year, he surprised me just how well he had grown and developed in Europe, and just how good he was in this league. And we started to build these pieces into the Breakers one by one. CJ Bruden came at a really important time as well. And just having his confidence and swag around the group was something different. But once again, a real key piece of that. But probably, two of the guys that I really put down as they're kind of like the heart and soul. Well, it was Paulie Hinari. And he was a very good friend of mine, and in that role, but still just a guy that wears his heart on his sleeve. And Mika Vakona. I think Mika he's a funny one to coach. He's just so instinctual, and he plays purely on instincts. The older he got, the smarter he got. But he was someone that I think just would inspire people to play at another level, because he would go to another level. And you look at the stat sheet, the stats are never going to tell the story of Mika Vakona, but you look at the championships that he got, and you go and ask players who they loved or who would be one of their favorite teammates. And I'm sure that plenty of guys will mention his name, but special times, and those are some special guys.
What would be your best advice to anyone attempting to be a successful basketballer or coach like yourself?
It takes time. I think, I've always believed in just keep persevering. We all have goals, and where people probably, you may not get that goal straight away, but you just got to continue to stay with it and believe in yourself. And that's hard for a lot of people. I think in this day and age, people are quick to just jump off and turn their focus to somewhere else. And we have so many different options available to us these days, but just to stay with it. You never know what's around the corner. I never knew that Melbourne Phoenix were going to be around the corner. So there's opportunities that pop up that you don't foresee, but if you've thrown it away, you're never going to see it. So you got to go ahead and stay with it, and look, just continue to sponge things up. The moment you think you know it, or the moment you stop learning. And so this game of basketball continues to evolve, and I continue to learn more and more as we go on, which, it's just the game, it's just the way it's been over the last few years. And so it's exciting. And if you're really passionate about it, you got to have the passion for sure. The passion that makes you turn up each day and love what you do. And I've been fortunate enough that from day one, I thought, okay, we'll see how far I go with this to 15 years later. And now here I am in Melbourne. So it's been a great journey and definitely not looking back.
Thanks, Judd, for coming on the podcast today and putting aside an hour or so of your time to come on and have a chat.
Wow, it's been an hour. Geez, that went quick, Max.
Yeah.
Well, no, thank you for having me, and all the best, mate. I'll be keeping an eye on it.
Thanks, Judd. Stay tuned, everyone, for some more Sporting Max.